Good morning, my YouTube viewers. It is Palestine here. Welcome to my channel. I wanted to make a video this morning about the Jason Arday case. About the Jason Arday plagiarism case. But I'm going to put a different slant on it. I'm going to talk about it from my personal perspective. Okay, so Jason Arday was a Cambridge professor. He was the youngest black Cambridge professor in the history of the university and maybe the history of the UK. I'm not sure. And he says that he is autistic. Well, I spent the entire weekend watching YouTube videos about Jason Arday and watching commentaries and what other people had to say and watching him speak. I know people who are autistic. I have an autistic friend, and he seems to me to be very articulate for an autistic person. Even Bill Gates, they said that Bill Gates had Asperger's syndrome, which is a type of autism. Even Bill Gates, although he made an operating system and a computer company, he is not as articulate as Jason Arday. So I'm a little bit suspicious of this diagnosis of autism. And what I know for a fact, because my boyfriend's sister did it, is people will get a diagnosis of autism just so they can get benefits. Because that's what my boyfriend's sister did. She got her son, no, my boyfriend's daughter did. She got her son a diagnosis of autism so she could get benefits. I do know someone who is genuinely autistic, and he goes to an autistic drinking group every Wednesday in a town not too far away from here. And he said he wouldn't wish autism on anybody. He said that, and he's not articulate. He's articulate. He reads a lot, but he doesn't do anything with what he's read. Like me, for example, I study a lot, but I study a lot. I used to in the past. I would study a lot in the hopes of getting a better job and making more money. And now I'm studying because you know, I got to stay employed because my pension isn't worth much. And so because my pension isn't worth much, I'll have to keep working. So I'm studying to try to stay relevant so I can keep working and making money. So the thing about autism is people who are autistic are not highly successful people. Generally, they're a disadvantage and they're held back. I personally, just watching Jason Arday speak, and the fact that he is so articulate, and the fact that he is able to make eye contact with people, I personally have my suspicions about whether or not he is in fact autistic. And so he hasn't provided his medical records to say that he's autistic. He also had global development delay, so which meant that he was mute until he was 11, and he didn't read or write until he was 18. Okay, so again, if you're mute until you're 11, I think it's going to be difficult to be as articulate as he is. But they said that I believe it was Albert Einstein, didn't speak until he was 5. So there are people who are late speakers. And so I don't want to comment on that. But apparently in his autobiography, he says that he went to speech therapists and things like that. But I saw a YouTube video about somebody, and I don't know if it's true or not, but he said that he went to school with Jason Arday, and he knew Jason Arday, and Jason Arday was chatting all the time. So I don't know if it's true. I don't know if this guy genuinely did know Jason Arday. I don't know. And then he's saying that the reason why people aren't coming forward is about to say that he did actually speak is because they're not on social media. So I don't know if it's true. I just watched that video, and I don't know if that guy actually knew him. But he said that he knew him, he went to school with him, and he went to church with him, and he did speak. He was chatting all the time. And there was this case of these twin girls that were put, I think they were put in Broadmoor, and they were mute twins. And so basically what they had done is they had spoke a language amongst themselves, but what they had done is they had decided that they weren't going to speak to other people. So they weren't mute, they just chose not to speak to other people. So I don't know, maybe that was Jason Arday's case. Maybe he really wasn't mute, he just chose not to speak to people. So I did watch a video this morning, and there was a man who actually taught him to read and write. And I think that you can actually be articulate without being able to read and write. I have a friend who has dyslexia, and he shakes all the time. So he can read a few words, but he can't read a lot because he's dyslexic, and he can't write because he shakes all the time. And so obviously he's not as articulate as Jason Arday, even though he's not autistic, he does actually have a learning disability. So Jason Arday, he got his bachelor's degree at St. Mary's at Twickenham and Liverpool John Moores University. So I guess he must have got a bachelor's degree in Twickenham and his PhD in Liverpool. I don't know where he got the money to go to school. I don't know if his parents paid for his education or if he got a student loan. I'm not sure exactly where he got the money to go to school. I had to pay for my education myself. And then so when he wrote his doctoral thesis, people are alleging that he plagiarized the thesis off of one of his students. So apparently I guess after he got his bachelor's degrees, or maybe even a master's, I don't know what degrees that they got, but apparently he plagiarized off a student. And they said that he was very smart because he plagiarized people who were not well known. He plagiarized people who were not well known, so it would be more difficult to find their work. But apparently some people did, and he's saying that the reason why people are saying that he plagiarized this work is because they're racist. Well, that's true. Obviously, if you're claiming to be autistic, and he hasn't presented his medical records or a letter from the doctor saying that he's autistic. And me personally, I know autistic people, and autism is a communication disability. He doesn't seem to me like he's got any problems communicating. That's what autism is. It's a disability of communication. He didn't seem to me to be autistic. Maybe he was diagnosed at autism when he was a child and he jumped out of it. I don't know. There's also discrepancies in his CV and his history, because he says that he's run marathons, loads of marathons, like every day a marathon. And he's run lots, like 600 miles in 6 days, and 30 marathons in 35 days. And he's raised millions of pounds in charity, but he says that he can't discuss it because he had to sign an NDA agreement, And they're saying that no, he personally didn't raise all these millions of pounds, but a group of people did. And apparently he went to Africa with a charity to install some water utilities of some kind. And this charity is saying that they wouldn't send people to Africa to do that. So all these things that he's saying that he did are very outlandish. So now they're saying he is a fantasist. Well, I have a former friend who is a fantasist as well. So my former friend is a fraudster, and he's actually in the news. I think the Daily Mail, the Daily Mirror, the Daily Express. I can't tell you his name, but if I told you his name, you could look it up, and he is in the news. There were other articles written about him as well, but I believe that he has had those articles removed from the internet, because you can have articles removed from the internet. But the Daily Mail, the Daily Mirror, the Daily Express, I think that those were big enough organizations to where he wasn't able to get those articles removed. But he's not my friend anymore. The reason why is he defrauded somebody that he met through me. And he defrauded someone in our church. And then it makes you wonder why he would defraud somebody in the church, because it's a small church and people were going to find out. And what did he think was going to happen when people found out that he defrauded somebody in the church? Did he think that he would be able to stay in the church? And so I was friends with this guy for 3 years, and I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I knew that he had been in prison for fraud, but I was giving him the benefit of the doubt because I was hoping that he had reformed himself. And obviously he hadn't reformed himself. And not only did he defraud people that he met through me, he also defrauded my boyfriend. And my boyfriend helped him a lot. And he stole like more than 1,200 pounds from my boyfriend's bank account. And, we're on benefits. So for us, 1,200 pounds is a lot of money for us. When you haven't got very much money, 1,200 pounds is a lot of money. So I do know what it's like to be friends with a fantasist. And then Jason Arday has also said things about having a brain tumor and a stroke and all kinds of things. He hasn't presented his medical records to prove any of these things, to prove being autistic. But this friend of mine, he is autistic, and he comes to my house every week. He tells a lot of stories too. He makes up a lot of stories. So I don't know if that is just a symptom of autism, or if my autistic friend, I don't talk to him about it that much because I don't want to upset him. But I don't know if he genuinely knows that he's making these stories up, or if he's hallucinating them, because I do know of instances where he has hallucinated things. So I don't know. My genuine autistic friend, who does have a diagnosis of autistic and does go to autism support groups, he tells a lot of tall tales too. But I don't know if it's because he knows that he's lying, or if he imagines things. So I don't know if that's the case for Jason Arday. I don't know if he knows he's lying, or if he just fantasizes it. So basically what happened was a lot of scrutiny came up about from Jason Arday, saying that he's plagiarized his PhD thesis. And Jason Arday saying it's racism. I do think that because he's black and in the public eye, that probably he's going to be subject to more scrutiny. And since he was the youngest black professor, definitely in prime Cambridge's history, he's going to be subject to scrutiny. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and these YouTube videos said that it was well known. It was well known in Cambridge that he wasn't living up to the hype. It was well known in Cambridge that he didn't do much. But Cambridge University has covered this up because he's their diversity hire. He's their poster child. So Cambridge University covered up the fact that he wasn't all that he said he was. And these people who investigated him, these people who investigated him were reprimanded because Cambridge University was trying to cover it up. They wanted to cover it up that their diversity hire, their poster child, was not all that he said he was. And they knew it. They knew it. But they were letting him continue to be a professor, even though they knew that, he wasn't truthful with his PhD thesis and with his CV and his backstory. And so basically, that happened to me. The people who questioned Jason Arday, they lost their position. I did watch a YouTube video about the man who actually exposed him, and this man who actually exposed him lost his position at Cambridge because he exposed him. And so there is a backlash, and that was like my personal situation with Foster Wheeler. Whenever I reported abuse, when I brought up what they were doing to harm me, and I do believe that was financially motivated because I was the affiliate coordinator, and they were being sold to, Foster Wheeler is being sold to AMEC, so I'm assuming that they wouldn't need an affiliate coordinator anymore, so they just decided that they would harm me or get me to harm myself and then make a little bit of money off of an insurance policy. But because I'm the victim, I can't tell you exactly what they did. I mean, only they know what they did, You'd have to ask people in Foster Wheeler what they did. And of course, they're never going to admit to anything because what they did was criminal. And I lost my job. I mean, I was going to lose my job anyway because Foster Wheeler was being sold to AMEC, and AMEC had a different financial structure, and I'm assuming they wouldn't need me anymore. They could have given me other work to do, such as being a cost engineer or being a proposal estimator, but they just decided that they would harm me and make money from my demise. And I lost my job for that. And I've never recovered, and that's why I'm making these videos. And this guy that exposed Jason Arday, he said he lost his job, lost one of his jobs, one of his positions at Cambridge because he had written pieces exposing Jason Arday. And he said that the academics at Cambridge knew that Jason Arday was not what he claimed to be, but they didn't say anything because they didn't want to lose their jobs too. And so now we get to the fact that these people were asking questions. One person emailed him and asked him some questions about his work, and Jason Arday replied and said, well, this is racist. If you contact me again, I'm going to make a complaint to the police. So the guy contacted him again, and Jason Arday did, in fact, make a complaint to the police. And then there was a journalist from Times, it was Times Educational something, but he was with the Times, so it's a very reputable organization. And so he emailed Jason Arday with a series of statements and asked Jason Arday, gave Jason Arday a right to reply. Well, Jason Arday didn't reply. He made a complaint to the police for racism and harassment. This is what really upsets me, is because the police actually investigated the claim that Jason Arday made against the journalist, and they made a 4-month investigation into this journalist, saying that he was racist and harassing him. That's what upsets me, because all he did was send an email. And then so the police told this journalist phoned him after 4 months and said they weren't going to take any further action on their investigation, but told him not to contact Jason Arday anymore because it was bad for his mental health. So another question I have is, why is Cambridge hiring somebody in a really high-profile position as a professor if he has mental health problems that are so debilitating that he cannot even answer a question about his PhD dissertation without becoming mentally unwell? That's another question. Why is Cambridge hiring these kind of people? And then I think also they were going to write, this newspaper or something was going to write an expose on him. And Jason Arday hired lawyers, and he hired really good top-tier lawyers. And these lawyers were intimidating people to keep quiet about the fact that they believed he had plagiarized his PhD dissertation. And the thing is they say that plagiarism wasn't minor. They said that this was the biggest case of plagiarism that they had ever seen. It was like over 100 passages or something like that. It was, most of this PhD dissertation had been plagiarized, and on the papers, other documents that he had written, he had plagiarized. And when people made typographical errors or grammatical errors in their papers, he copied these grammatical errors over. So that pretty much, if he couldn't read or write until he was 18 and he had to be taught to read and write, then yeah, maybe he didn't know very much about English. And I don't know what he did in school if he wasn't speaking. But then one person on YouTube said that he went to school with him and church with him, and he was speaking. So, but anyway, so I think that Jason Arday knew that he had plagiarized people's work and was taking people's work and saying it was his own. And I think that he used the police to intimidate these people to be quiet, and he used lawyers to intimidate these people to be quiet. And I know about that too, because I live in a council estate with some pretty savory people, and I received lawyers' letters about this one man that liked children. And so obviously you're scared, especially me, because I'm living here in the UK with no friends, no family, no support. You get scared, and so they intimidate you into being quiet. And then years later, the police contacted me and wanted to talk to me about that man who sicked a lawyer on me because one of the people that he had lived with had come back and said that he had harmed them. So the police wanted to interview me and talk to me about what I knew about this man. So it always comes out in the end. And so Jason Arday, he used the police to intimidate people and claiming that they were being racist. And it could be that they highlighted him, that they were picking on him because he was a diversity hire and he claimed to be autistic. He claimed not to speak until he was 11. He claimed not to be able to read and write until he was 18. And he made all these outlandish claims. It could be racist that they decided to look at his dissertation and then they found out that it had been plagiarized. But I don't know what their motivation was. But according to the man who exposed Jason Arday, he said pretty much everybody in Cambridge knew that he was not what he claimed to be, but they didn't want to say anything because they didn't want to lose their jobs. But what upsets me, this is what upsets me, is that Jason Arday, who now they believe to be a fantasist, a thief and a fantasist, that's what they believe. Now, he phoned the police, and the police took him seriously, and the police investigated a journalist from the Times for 4 months. And so what happened to me when I was harassed out of my job at Foster Wheeler? They harassed me in all aspects of my life. They harassed me at work, at home, in the town I live in, when I went to holiday, when I went to another town. They were there. They were there. They made their presence known. They wanted me to know that they were watching me. And when I made a complaint to the police about what they were doing, the police called me into their office, and I thought, oh, they're going to take me seriously. No, they didn't. The police read me the riot act, and they were yelling at me, and they told me that if I didn't like my job, just quit. And they were trying to say that I was threatening Foster Wheeler. How could I, a little middle-aged office worker, threaten a big company like Foster Wheeler? So the police didn't support me. All the times I phoned the police. And then so when I left Foster Wheeler, the harassment continued into my home. And I'm not going to say what they did because I don't want to give anybody any ideas. But again, I had to phone the police. And again, the police did nothing. And not only did the police do nothing about the vandalism that occurred inside and outside of my home, they said I was having a relapse, even though they could see the evidence of what had been done. So I think the police are misguided. Best case scenario. Okay, so Jason RD was taken seriously by the police, even though they now believe he's a thief and a fantasist. He was taken seriously by the police, claiming racism because he's a man of color and a professor at Cambridge University. I wasn't taken seriously. I'm going to tell you, I'm one of less than a handful of people, or well, a handful, one of a handful of white people living in the complex where I live in. Everybody else is mainly black, but there might be a few brown people. So I was a victim of racism, but because I'm white, and I'm not even totally white. You can see my brown hair, my brown eyes. You can see I'm not totally white, but I'm a victim of racism. But I can't claim racism, even though I'm living in a compound full of black and brown people. I can't claim racism because I was brought up as a white person, even though you can look at my hair and my eyes and my skin, see how tan I am? You see that I'm not totally white. That's what upsets me. That is what upsets me, is Jason Arday, a fantasist and a plagiarizer, got the police to do his bidding to intimidate people. But when I was legitimately being harassed and threatened and intimidated by my former employer, Foster Wheeler, and the people I lived with, and I think that they had other people roped in, I think they decided that they were going to make money off of my demise because I was single, no dependents, no friends, no family, all on my own, that they decided they were going to harm me and make a lot of money out of it. And the police did nothing. And part of the harassment that I was subjected to was racial, because I was brought up as a white person, even though I'm not totally white. And where I live, it's full of black and brown people. Police didn't do anything for me. They didn't do anything for me because they will not investigate. They will not investigate a claim of racism against a white person. So I think that concludes my video. That's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to say how upset I am that Jason Arday was taken seriously by the police when he claimed racism and harassment, and I wasn't, because somebody sent an email, and I wasn't taken seriously by the police when I was harassed at my place of work, in my home, outside of my home, in my town, in other towns, while I was on holiday. And so, yeah. You can't make it up, can you? So I'm going to go ahead and close this video. If you like my video, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching my video and taking an interest in my very pathetic life.